Welcome back to Danjo Trains. Today's video is all about road construction. I'll be building another large section of street running road plate with the curved track. You'll also see me integrate the road directly into the city and cover some finer details. So let's jump in. For this video, I wanted to minimize the off-camera work and really show the trial and error process of building the roads, since I'm not using any digital plans to build them. So to begin, this section of road is slightly larger than the previous one. That is because I need an extra half plate here. This gives the curve the proper clearance required when I will place it next to the daily bugle. I start by connecting the track to the base plate to create a point of reference and make sure that it clips together properly with the existing road. Next, I need to connect these base plates together and figure out the correct point to attach the other end of the track. For those that don't know, when attaching base plates together, there is a small gap that forms, which you can see here. With my grey 1x8 plates at either end to attach the track, I can start building the rest of the road plate. Previously, I had mostly used black bricks when making the bases to give everything a nicer finish, but it's actually much cheaper to buy obscure colors in bulk, such as the lime green you see here. Also, the sides of these roads will end up being covered, which you'll get a preview of near the end of this video. Anytime I build near a gap, I want to make sure that the connecting piece of Lego attaches to both sides to create a more solid structure. If you have not seen my previous videos on road plates, I used these 1x4 Technic bricks so that I can connect the roads together eventually with Technic pins. I alternate them with regular 1x4 bricks and the 2x4 bricks in lime green. This technique of building up the base plate is known as mills and was developed by the LEGO community. As you can see, it uses up a lot of extra bricks and will eat into your LEGO budget. That is why I'm only doing this technique for the downtown area to accommodate the integrated train tracks. For the rest of the layout, I'll have to come up with something more cost effective. The next area of the road is the transition to the park. Here's a render from my digital model. Therefore, this next part is supposed to be a little different. The wall that retains the earth for the park will be light bluish gray. I use these 2x6 wedges to mark the transition. This next part I did do off camera, and that was placing tiles to support the train track in specific locations. Finally, the curved track goes down, and I make sure it's secure in place. Now it's time for the Trixbrix Pavement. Since I built the previous road plate by trial and error, I opened it up to take a look at the substructure under the tiles and copy the placement of the support bricks. This basically consists of using different sizes of plates stacked together to support the 3D printed pavement. I also use larger plates and tiles to form the surface of the road, which is also supported by plates underneath. The sides are one plate taller and finished with light bluish gray tiles. Here once again, I'm using more obscure colors of LEGO bricks to save on cost, which I purchased on Bricklink. If you go to the LEGO Pick a Brick website, the bricks all seem to be the same price, irregardless of the color, and they are more expensive, but you do get free shipping. As someone who buys a lot of LEGO, I think it's good practice to use both Pick a Brick and Bricklink for bulk purchases. Just remember to always shop around for the best deals. Now, I continue working on the road by adding more of the 3D printed Trixbrix Pavement. Once again, anytime I work near a gap in the base plates, I'll make sure that I'm using plates that attach to both sides to create a more solid structure. So previously, I had used these large dark bluish gray plates and tiles to create the pavement, which are supported by these blue 2x2 plates over here. Now, I wanted to try something different. What I'm doing here instead is placing these 2x4 bricks in rows with a gap of 2 studs between them. The idea is that the dark bluish grey tiles that form the pavement will sit directly on top of the bricks and overlap the roads. I found it was much more simple than the previous way I used for building the roads, and was also much easier to remove the tiles in the case that I made a mistake. In terms of cost, it's difficult to say if it's more expensive than the other technique or not, but for me personally, I already had a lot of these bricks sitting around, so I was happy to put them to good use. I think the road plate turns out to be slightly heavier this way too, but weight shouldn't be an issue if you have a solid table for your Lego city. I still end up using the grey plates to finish the sides here. One disadvantage with this method is that you can see through the gaps in the tiles ever so slightly, but only if you're really close. Now, unfortunately for the transition area with the park, I could not find a simple way to build it so that it looked like the render from my 3D model. This meant that I had to remove the light bluish grey wedge pieces that were already buried under the roads. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of trial and error in the building process that I don't usually show on camera. However, if this is something you enjoy viewing, I'll be sure to include it more often in my videos. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Back to the road plate, I finally have everything back in order. So, I decided to just fill this space with bricks and tile everything with these 2x2 dark bluish grey tiles to match the 3D printed pieces. Over on the left side, I end up using the old technique with plates instead of bricks. Since this transition area is meant to be the start of a pedestrian section of the city, including Diagon Alley, I feel like the 2x2 tiles work well here. What I mean by that is that even though the tiles are the same color as the road pavement for the cars, the different geometry creates a natural break. Now that the road plate is mostly done, let's add it to the city next to the Daily Bugle to make sure that everything looks good together. Beautiful. But we're not done yet. Let's get back to work. First, I'll finish the area next to the Daily Bugle. It's a bit taller here, so I need to add a layer of plates. Next, I'll finish the tiling. Even though I'm using 2x2 tiles here in dark grey, in retrospect, I think it might look better on the raised portion to go with light bluish grey to match the color of the sidewalk. I'll have to fix that in another update. So, this area on the right will eventually be part of a larger park that I plan to build for my city. In the meantime, I'm going to use this small base plate as a placeholder until I work it out. Now I finished the rest of the tiling on the sides here. I'm going with light bluish grey tiles, but I'm also making the sidewalk thicker. This gives it more of a look like it's the end of a road, but also a place where people can park their cars before they go for a walk in the park. I'll have to place some of the smaller cars here, otherwise the trains will likely clip them as they go by. And finally, we're on the home stretch for the tiling. Before we add the rest of the Trixbrix pieces, I want to talk about something important that I didn't realize last time. Included in the pack is this special part here. It's meant to be a transition from the curved 3D printed pieces and the standard Lego tiles. One side has edges that are tapered and one side does not, which helps the train wheels smooth out of the curve and prevent them from clipping the tiles. They go together properly when the tapered end connects with the curved piece. So let's go ahead and install them into the roads. Finally, let me add the remaining 3D printed pieces. It was very satisfying to leave this part for last. And just like that, the road plate is complete. Of course, there are always a few minor things to fix. I was missing these tiles because I had to order more. Over on the other side of the city, there are a few things to fix as well. This is what happens when you don't install the transition 3D printed piece. So let me dig these tiles and plates out and get that fixed up. Looks like I need to dig deeper and remove the 4x8 plate. Like I said, trial and error. Finally, we can install the correct piece where it's meant to go. Unfortunately, the tolerance seems to be off, so I end up swapping out this part for another one. There we go, no more issues, and nothing but smooth rolling. Next, as many of the viewers noticed and pointed out in a previous video, it's time to finally replace these 2x2 modified tiles for the correct color in dark gray. I do like this type of interaction with viewers, so if you ever notice other details out of place, please let me know in the comments. There we go. Let me also fix this on the other side of the street as well. Now, I'm still missing half the roads from my city, but I also want to run my trains around downtown. So in the meantime, I'm going to cheat and just add plates underneath these tracks to raise them to the correct height. So let's run some trains. Back over on the new road section. Here are two smaller cars parked near the end. And imagine that these two are ready to go for a walk in the future park. One last detail for today. I promised at the beginning of the video a bit of a preview of how I'll be covering the sides of the roads, and that would be with these guardrails here. They install on the sides of the road and end up flush with the plywood. Of course, I need to pull my entire city forward so that the rails are also flush with the edge of the table, but that's for another time. And that's it for today. So thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the latest update. This was the longest video I made so far. I'm really happy with all the progress on the roads. It really feels like the city is starting to come to life. There's still more road to build, so I'll have to make another road video, but I plan to focus on the ideas I read in the comments of how to improve the 3D printed pieces, such as giving them a glossy finish. I'm also beginning to add more fun, little scenes hidden across the city. There's definitely a New York City vibe to it. But remember, at its core, this layout is meant to entertain people rather than be a detailed model of a real place. That being said, I hope you like what you see. So, please let me know what you think in the comments below. I love to hear your feedback. And don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Bye for now.